The theme for this morning's message is on the theme of witnessing, and I'd like to begin in this way. My friend, as he was sitting at his desk, listening to his coworkers hurling angry insults at one another, felt his heart quiver. And the reason why was because he's a Christian. It was his first day on the job in the finance industry. It was his dream his whole life. All he wanted to do was work hard, serve at his church hard, and go home and be happy. But when he started this job, he realized doing that would be much, much harder than he expected. He knew that the way that his coworkers were speaking and they were acting towards one another, it was not the way God wanted him to speak and to act. And so he realized the more time he spent at his company, that if I want to survive, I need to be like them. I remember one night he came to our small group meeting at church. I still remember his face. He was very dejected, very drained look on his face. And he sat through the whole Bible study without saying a single word, but at the very end, he confessed something to our group, and he said to us, I feel like I'm compromising my faith. These days, I don't feel like I'm a witness for Jesus. I actually feel like I'm a witness against him. I'm insulting my coworkers behind their backs. When they do something wrong, I berate them. I get angry and frustrated at the smallest things, and my boss actually rewards me for this. I know God wants me to honor him in my workplace, but sometimes I forget that I'm a Christian. My friend's account reminds all of us in this room, being a Christian does not just mean private piety. Being a Christian actually means public piety. And being a Christian doesn't just mean it's a private relationship between me and God. Your relationship with God is actually a very public one. God cares deeply about your faithfulness, not just when you're alone. He cares about your faithfulness when you're at work, when you're with your kids, when you're coaching youth basketball, when you're waiting in line at Disney World. He cares about everything, wherever you are. The truth is, and I'll be the first to raise my hand and confess this, that we forget. We forget that we're Christians. We forget that our work is not meaningless, and it's not just a means to an end, but our work, your work, is a holy calling from God that God handpicked for you and placed you in your industry or your field. He put you in there specifically, not just to be excellent, not just to do a good job and make ends meet. He placed you there to be a witness, but we forget that. We forget that coaching, youth basketball, we forget that waiting in line at Disney World, we feel like these are mundane things that we just have to get through and then go home, but they are opportunities God handpicks, drops in your lap so that you can show the people there and the kids there how amazing God is. But again, we forget, and I forget. This is why Jesus is encouraging us in these 4 verses. He knows it is hard to be a witness. He knows how hard it is for you right now. He knows you're hanging on, and he knows that it's hard enough for me to do my job, and now I have to be a witness. He understands. Jesus worked in a carpenter shop since he was young. He knows what it's like to be in a workplace. He knows, which is why he even says this. He is encouraging you this morning by reminding you of 2 things before you go out for another week. Number 1, he's asking you to remember who you are. And secondly, he's asking you to remember to shine your light. So first one, remember who you are. So to give some context again, you guys know we've been in the Sermon on the Mount these last couple of weeks. So this is in the Bible where Jesus has just begun his earthly ministry, and there are crowds of people following him, and at one point he retreats from them, he goes up a mountainside, and he sits down, and he's with his disciples, and he begins to talk to them. These disciples are men who have devoted themselves to following Jesus. But isn't it interesting? Jesus sits down and says, here's what it really means to follow me. And in doing so, he's actually saying the same thing to you. Here's what it means to be a Christian. Here's what it means to be a follower of me. And he gives it to us in 4 different ways. But the first way he says to you is this: you are the salt of the earth. You are the salt of the earth. You and I might not think much about salt today, but back then in Jesus' day, salt was actually very important to human life. It didn't just flavor their food and make it taste better like it does today. Salt was a very heavily used preservative. It was used to prevent something from decaying and going bad. And so today, if you think about those things, something that lasts a long time, something that doesn't go bad, that symbol for us today is a diamond. When you get engaged, you give someone a diamond ring. Back then, it was salt, which is why if you go all the way back to the Old Testament, in Leviticus chapter 2, God asked the Israelites, hey guys, when you give me your grain offerings, don't just give it to me, but actually I want to ask, season it with salt. And it's not to make it taste better, but what God is saying to Israel is this: I want you to remember, my relationship with you is not going to go bad. My relationship with you is not ever going to decay. And this salt is here to remind you of that. No matter what you've done, no matter how your week has gone, I'm going to be your God and you're my people. Isn't it interesting? Jesus now says to you and to me, guys, you're not a lawyer. You're not in finance. You're not a mom. You're not even a dad. He says, you are mine and you are the salt of the earth. What Jesus is saying is this: in the same way that salt adds flavor and makes something taste better, you make the world taste better. And in the same way that salt prevents something from going bad and decaying, Jesus actually says Christians who are dispersed in the world and in different industries or with different families in different areas of the world, you guys actually prevent this world from going bad. This is what Jesus says your relationship is with the world. You're not a turtle that goes inside your shell after work or even during work, but you're actually someone who is everyone sees you. Everyone can taste you. They see the difference you're making in the workplace. They see how you're talking to people, and they think that tastes good. Wow, you're really making this workplace or my family a better place to be. That's what Jesus is saying. And he doesn't just say you are the salt of your house or your family or your company or your school. He says you're the salt of the earth. He's saying every sphere of your life, you are the salt of those spheres, of those areas as well. This leads us to the second way that Jesus describes you. He doesn't just say you're salt. He says in verse 14, you are the light of the world. You're the light of the world. I remember when I first met my wife in 2017 at a retreat, she was singing for the worship, and I saw my wife up there singing. I don't remember the song we sang, but I remember what she looked like and what her voice sounded like. I wanted to know her name. I wanted to talk to her. I wanted to know where you're from. And I got to do that eventually. I was completely drawn to her. She was like a light that lit up a dark room, literally. I share this because when Jesus says, guys, you are the light of the world, he's talking about something very similar. So he's not talking about someone who's very attractive or someone who is the life of a party. Everyone kind of wants to talk to this person. He's saying this is a person who reflects Jesus' character and the message Jesus brings to the world, which is grace for sinners, in such a way that even if there's someone who has just such a life that's opposite to what Jesus wants us to live, that person is actually attracted to you and wants to talk to you and wants to have lunch with you. That's what it means to be the light of the world. People are drawn to you. And this leads us to the third and fourth ways Jesus describes us in verse 14 and 15. He says this: a city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In those verses, Jesus is giving two negatives to affirm a positive. He's saying, you can't hide a city at nighttime. Everyone sees. And when you light a lamp, you don't hide it, you put it up so everyone can see. What's Jesus saying here? He's saying this: the job description of a Christian, it can't be fulfilled by private and personal holiness. The job description of a Christian is both private and public. And if you put that all together, here's what Jesus is saying. All he's saying is this to you. He's saying, when you go to work this week, When you talk to your kids this evening after they get in trouble, when you're talking to your neighbor salting your driveways, he's saying, I want you to remember who you are. You are not a lawyer. You are not a doctor. You are not even a mom or a dad or a sister or brother. You are mine, and you are the salt of the earth. He says, I made you and saved you for that. How do we do that? Let me give you two practical ways. In Mark chapter 9, verse 50, Jesus actually shares one way that you can be a witness and salt and light. He says, be at peace with one another. And let me read it. He literally says, have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another. You know what he's talking about? This means the way you live, the way you work, the way you travel, and the way you shop, your conduct and behavior actually has a positive impact on anyone you might encounter. That's what he's talking about. Another way that Jesus says you could be salt and light is, he says, gracious speech. So if you go to Colossians 4:6, Paul says, let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt. There's that word again, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. A way that a Christian witnesses is also not just by actions, but it's by the way you speak. You don't speak immorally. You don't engage in the same water cooler talk that everyone else is engaging in. Your speech is different. And he says, and Paul says, it's gracious. It's salty. People want to talk to you because it's different. So these are two ways, but let me be honest with you. This is really hard to do. When I was reflecting on what Jesus is saying in these verses, I actually became very discouraged. And the reason why is because I've been a Christian for almost 20 years. To me, that's a long time. But I still have so much trouble being a witness. And I was thinking about that, and I realized here's the reason why. I'm afraid of people. When I came to Joy, I was one of the things I guess that the staff does is they take a test, personality test. I took it, and it told me that basically, Jonathan, you like to blend in. You don't like to be distinct. You don't like to be salty. You just want to be with everyone else. And you want harmony. You're not the person to speak out and say, no, we should do it like this. So you understand where I'm coming from. It's hard. Ed Welch is a Christian counselor, and he wrote a book that's called When People Are Big and God is Small. And I was reading this book years ago, and I remembered it. And I pulled up this quote, and I want to share it with you. Maybe this will help you. He writes this: all experiences of the fear of man share at least one common feature, that people are big. Since there is no room in your heart or mind for us to worship both God and people, he says if people are big in your life, if they're more important to you, then God is always going to be less important. You're always going to try to please people. You're rarely going to be a witness if people are ultimately who you're trying to please. What he's saying is this: why it's so hard to witness, the reason why it's hard for us to be distinct from everyone around us is simply because people are big and God is not. And I share that with you because some of you guys may be feeling like me. You might be thinking right now, I'm honestly not sure if anyone knows that I'm a Christian outside of church. I think that sometimes. But let me encourage you with this. Isn't it interesting again? Jesus says this. He reminds his disciples, and he's reminding you this morning, guys, remember who you are. If someone reminds you, they know they're doing it because they know it's hard. They know it's not easy to remember that. They know you get super busy and it's super discouraging with family and kids and work and whatnot. Jesus understands, which is why he's reminding you through his word, remember who you are. But what does that look like? I remember a pastor shared that there was a young worker at his church. She made a mistake that was so bad. Her career was virtually over. And her boss was very well respected by his superiors. He had a lot of trust and credibility with them. But when he learned what she did, he actually took the blame for her. He went to his bosses and said, I didn't train her. I didn't give her thorough instructions. I basically threw her into that mess. And so if anyone takes the blame, I should take the blame. He lost his credibility with his bosses. He lost a certain measure of respect, but he saved her job. And so when she found out about this, she went up to him and asked him, why did you do that? And he said, it's okay, just let's move on. It's okay. Don't worry about it. But she wasn't satisfied. And so when she kept pressing him, he finally said to her, I did it because I'm a Christian. My whole life is based on another man taking the blame for me. And so that's why I took the blame for you. And her next question was to him, where do you go to church? The reason why you are ever going to take the blame for someone who made a mistake at work, and the reason why you're ever going to be a salt and a light for your family members or your workplaces is not because you have a strong will. It is not because you're a good person. It's because there was someone else, another man, who took the blame for you. And you're living your life flowing out from that wonderful truth, Jesus Christ taking the blame for you. So my encouragement to you is this: you were made and you were saved to be the salt and light of the earth. So go to your prayer closet and pray, but don't stay there. Go to your study or stay in your car before work and read the Bible and listen to it, but don't stay there. You are the salt and light of the world. This is who you were called to be. Not a lawyer, not a doctor, not in finance, whatever, a teacher, mom or dad, unemployed. You were called to be salt and light of the earth. Which leads us to the second point and last point. Remember to shine your light. Jesus says in verse 16, in the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. So in this verse, Jesus is simply driving home his point. What it means to shine your light and what it means to be the salt of the earth is simply this. He says, it's so that you do good works so that when people see the way you speak and they see the way you parent and they see the way you treat your spouse, they respect you, but they don't give you the credit. They actually ask, why is this person so different from everyone else I've ever known in my life? That's what Jesus is saying. But as you hear Jesus saying this to you right now, guys, come on, let your light shine. Do good works so that people look at you and glorify God. We think big. We think that God and Jesus is asking us right now, go out and evangelize to 100 people. We think that he's asking us to go on a missions trip, stay there for more than 1 week, midterm, for a few months. But shining your light as a Christian can be as small as saying to a coworker who is grieving a loss, can I pray for you? Shining your light as a Christian can be as small as saying to someone whose kids are struggling, there's a youth group at my church. They meet on Fridays at 7:30. Maybe there are some kids there who your child can relate to so that he or she wouldn't be so lonely. When someone compliments you at your work for doing such a good job, it could be as small as saying, I'm just thankful that God brought me and my family to this area so that I could be part of this team and this company. I'm just so thankful to God for that. When someone makes a mistake at work, showing them grace. We do these things as Christians not out of compulsion and not out of a mere morality to be a good person, but we do it because, again, there was one man who showed me compassion first. There was one man who showed me mercy first. There was one man, when I messed up and I made all these mistakes in my life, he still reached out, held my hand and wanted to love me and wanted a relationship with me. We do it because he did it first. And so my encouragement to you is to go out into your world this week. You are the salt of the earth. You are lights to everyone around you. It's what you were made to do, and it's what you were saved to do. And in case you're thinking, I'm not influential, I'm not in a position of power, I'm not much of a talker, I'm not much of a prayer warrior, I've never evangelized to someone in my whole life, I want to leave you with this. In the 1990s, there's a group of Christians who traveled all the way from America to China to speak with the president of China at that time. This president was notorious for being a hard persecutor of Christians back then. Their goal for this trip was to convince him to ease up the pressure. And so during that meeting, this group of Christians brought a copy of John's Gospel, and they handed it to the president, and they said, "Mr. President, this is a copy of John's Gospel. Would you read it?" And they were expecting no, but to their surprise, the president said, "Yes, I will read it." And then they asked him, "That's great, but why? Why are you so willing to read it?" Here's what he said. He said, "The reason why I'm willing to read this is because when I was a child, the woman, the nurse who took care of me and raised me, she was so nice, and she was so lovely, and she was a Christian. For her sake, I'm going to read this." And I leave you with that story because you don't know how God is going to use your prayer for your grieving coworker. You don't know how God is going to use a devotional that you give to your unbelieving family members for Christmas. You don't know how God is going to use the little grain of salt that you just throw out hoping someone will catch it. You don't know how he's going to use that to change an entire country. And by the way, later in this president's presidency, he eased up pressure on Christians, and no one knows why. I think it's because a small reason that there was a lady who raised him, and she read in her Bible, Jesus says, "I'm the salt and light. I'm going to love this child, even though I'm tired. I'm going to love this child, even though he's acting up. And I'm going to do it because Jesus loved me first." So go out and remember who you are. And go out and remember to shine your light. You don't know how God's going to use you.